If you're ready to make AI your superpower, welcome. Every video gives you new tools, new tricks, and simple shortcuts to level up your workflow instantly. No fluff, no geek talk, just practical power you can use today.
Can AI create 3D models? A year ago, I would have said they looked interesting, but most of them needed hours of cleanup before you could actually use them. Today, that's changing fast. I recently started working on a futuristic game environment, and I needed dozens of high-quality 3D assets without spending days modeling everything from scratch. That's when I found an amazing tool I have to share with you guys. It's called Meshy 6. And honestly, it completely changed how I approach 3D asset creation. So today, we're putting it to the test. We'll create an entire scene from scratch, compare it against another popular AI 3D generator, examine the geometry up close, test its newest features, and see whether it really deserves the title of the best AI 3D texturing tool. Let's jump in. Instead of generating random objects, I wanted to build something that feels like a real production workflow. Imagine you're creating a sci-fi game level. You need a hero robot, futuristic crates, holographic props, mechanical doors, warning signs, and dozens of background assets. Normally, creating all of that manually could take days or even weeks. Before we start, here's one quick definition. An AI texture generator is a tool that automatically creates or applies realistic textures to a 3D model using text prompts or reference images, helping produce detailed assets much faster than traditional manual workflows. For this project, I'm using Meshy 6, and one thing that immediately stood out is that it isn't just about generating a model. It tries to streamline the entire workflow, from the first idea all the way to a production-ready asset. Let's see how it performs. Now for the fun part. Instead of starting with a finished image, I'm going to begin with nothing more than an idea. One of the newest additions in Meshy 6 is the Nano integration, which makes the creative process feel much more natural. Rather than jumping straight into a 3D model, you can first generate a concept image, refine the look, and then transform that image into a detailed 3D asset. This text-to-image to 3D workflow gives you much more creative control before committing to the final model. For my scene, I want a futuristic security robot guarding the entrance of a research facility. So I'll enter a prompt describing the character, including metallic armor, glowing blue accents, mechanical joints, and a clean sci-fi style. Within moments, Nanobana generates several concept images. I like this one because the silhouette is strong, the proportions look balanced, and it already matches the style I'm aiming for. Instead of stopping here, I'll send this image directly into Meshy's image to 3D generator. Now the AI analyzes the concept and begins reconstructing it as a complete textured 3D model. And here it is. The first thing I always check is the overall shape. From a distance, the proportions already look surprisingly close to the original artwork. But what really matters is the quality up close. Let's zoom in. Around the shoulders, the armor plates remain well defined. The mechanical joints have nice separation instead of blending together. The facial details stay consistent with the concept art, and the glowing sections are positioned where you'd expect them to be. The texture also follows the geometry naturally, without obvious stretching across larger surfaces. That alone can save a lot of cleanup time later. If you've worked with AI-generated 3D assets before, you know that texture alignment can often become one of the biggest bottlenecks. Here, everything feels much more production-ready right out of the generator. This is exactly why starting with text-to-image to 3D feels so useful. You can lock in the design first, then let Meshy build the 3D version while keeping that visual style consistent. But one hero character isn't enough. A believable environment needs dozens of supporting assets, and creating them one by one would still take quite a while. Thankfully, Meshy has another feature that makes that process much faster. The hero character looks great, but a single model doesn't make a convincing scene. To really sell the environment, I need background assets, things like futuristic cargo crates, power generators, metal barriers, warning signs, control panels, and industrial containers. Normally, I'd have to generate each one individually, wait for it to finish, check the result, and repeat the process over and over. That works, but it isn't the fastest way to build a complete world. This is where batch images to 3D comes in. Instead of uploading one reference image at a time, I can upload multiple images together and let Meshy generate several 3D assets in one workflow. If you're building an environment, this feature can save a huge amount of time because you're creating multiple background props simultaneously instead of one after another. I've prepared a small collection of reference images that all match the same sci-fi style. Now I'll upload them together, start the generation, and let Meshy process everything at once. A few minutes later, I've got an entire library of matching assets ready to use. That's something I really appreciate here. The props feel like they belong in the same world. The materials are visually consistent, the overall style matches, and I don't feel like I'm mixing assets from completely different artists. That consistency is incredibly important when you're creating games, animations, or cinematic projects. Now let's bring everything into my scene. A few minutes later, I've got an entire library of matching assets ready to use. That's something I really appreciate here. The props feel like they belong in the same world. The materials are visually consistent, the overall style matches, and I don't feel like I'm mixing assets from completely different artists. That consistency is incredibly important when you're creating games, animations, or cinematic projects. Now let's bring everything into my scene. As I place each object into the environment, the scene starts coming together surprisingly quickly. The cargo crates fill the loading area, the barriers define the pathways, the generators add visual interest, and the control panels make the environment feel functional rather than empty. This is where AI really shines, not by replacing creativity, but by removing repetitive production work so you can spend more time refining your ideas. So far, the workflow has been smooth, but the real question is whether these models actually hold up under closer inspection. It's one thing for a model to look good from a distance. It's another for it to stay clean when you zoom in, rotate it, and compare it directly with other AI 3D tools. That's exactly what we're going to do next. Now comes the part I always care about most, the quality check. Rather than just saying a model looks good, let's inspect it closely. Starting with the textures, one thing I notice is how well they follow the geometry. The metallic panels line up naturally with the armor pieces, and I don't see the obvious stretching that can sometimes appear on curved surfaces. The surface details also remain sharp instead of becoming blurry as the shapes get more complex. Next, let's look at the geometry itself. Meshy 6 introduces improvements to enhanced hard surface generation, and that becomes especially noticeable on mechanical objects. The panel edges look crisp, the corners are well defined, and the overall structure feels much cleaner than what I've seen from earlier AI-generated models. For hard surface assets like robots, machinery, or industrial props, that extra edge definition makes a real difference. Now let's switch over to a character model. According to Meshy's latest update, refined geometry focuses on producing smoother and more anatomically natural organic shapes. Looking closely at the face, hands, and body proportions, the overall form appears cleaner and more stable than many earlier AI-generated character models I've tested. During my comparison, Meshy also showed greater stability on character generation, and I found it had a distinct advantage in visual aesthetics, particularly when preserving the style of the original concept artwork. Of course, no AI tool is perfect. Depending on the prompt, you may still want to make small adjustments for professional production work, but compared with another leading AI 3D generator I tested using similar prompts, Meshy consistently required less cleanup before the assets felt ready for use. Another improvement worth mentioning is the updated texture generation. The new version focuses on stronger fidelity, cleaner surfaces, and improved delighting control. In practice, that means the textures stay closer to the original reference image while reducing unwanted baked-in lighting that can limit flexibility later in your workflow. For game developers, there's also low-poly optimization, which generates efficient wireframes designed for real-time rendering. That can make exporting assets into game engines much smoother without sacrificing too much visual quality. Meshy 6 also introduces multicolor 3D printing, automatically mapping complex textures to compatible filament colors, helping physical print stay much closer to what you see on screen. And one feature I had fun experimenting with is the new custom pose tool. I uploaded a character reference along with a separate pose reference image, adjusted the joints, and within moments, the character adopted the new pose surprisingly well. It's a great option for creating dynamic presentations or preparing characters for different scenes without having to pose them manually. So after examining the textures, geometry, and overall workflow, there's one more feature I still have to try. And honestly, it's probably the most exciting one. Let's bring these static models to life with Meshy's new 3D to video feature. At this point, we've created a hero character, built an environment, and taken a close look at the model quality. But having a great static model is cool. Meshy 6 added something insane: 3D to video. Instead of exporting everything into another application just to create a quick cinematic, I can generate a short animated sequence directly from my 3D model. I'll select the robot we created earlier, open the 3D to video feature, and give it a simple prompt. Something like, a futuristic security robot slowly walks through a neon-lit research facility while the camera circles around it. Cinematic lighting, atmospheric fog, dramatic reflections, ultra-realistic. Now Meshy generates the scene while keeping the character as the main subject. And here's the result. For something that only took a few minutes to generate, it's surprisingly cinematic. The camera movement feels smooth, the lighting creates a much stronger atmosphere, and the model immediately feels more alive than it did as a static render. For creators working on game concepts, product visualization, short films, or social media content, this can be a huge time saver when you need to present ideas quickly. To finish the project, I'll import all of the generated assets into Blender and assemble the complete environment. Seeing everything together really highlights how much faster this workflow is compared to creating every asset manually. Instead of spending days modeling, texturing, and refining every object from scratch, I was able to focus on building the scene and experimenting with ideas. After using the complete workflow, from text to image to 3D, to batch images to 3D, testing the new Meshy 6 updates, and finishing with 3D to video, I can definitely see why so many creators are paying attention to this platform. If you're wondering whether it's worth trying, my experience has been very positive. Meshy is the best text to 3D model tool I've tested for this workflow. After testing Meshy 6 alongside another leading AI 3D generator using the same types of prompts, I found that Meshy consistently produced cleaner texture alignment and geometry in my tests, especially on characters and hard surface models. Depending on your project and prompts, your results may vary, but it delivered the strongest overall workflow for this build. If you've been looking for a faster way to create production-ready 3D assets, it's definitely worth trying yourself. You can check it out using the link in the description to learn more about the current offer. And remember, got an idea? Meshy it now at 50% off via the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more AI tools tested in real creative projects, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which AI tool I should test next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.